Welcome to the session 2 of day 2. So in the session 1, prior to this, we were talking about an on-grid solar power plant. How do we identify what is the units requirement of a client from a EV card, and then proposing the size of the plant. So based on your net metering policies of the state, we have to identify the data and requirement for net feed-in kind of policies, and then we have to propose the size of the solar plant. Fine. And now in this session, we are going to find out how can we what are the parameters required to design a solar power plant. Basically, now I have identified that let's say I need a 20 kilowatt system or a 10 kilowatt system uh, for a client. Now I have to find out what kind of inverter, which solar panels, what kind of structures to be used. So we are going to talk that on this session. So let's design a 10 kilowatt on-grid power plant. So what are the information required? Can you quickly type in the chat box what are the information required? Let's make the session more interactive. Otherwise, it becomes much boring from my side telling on this thing. So if I receive from your side, it will be much encouraging. What are the information required to design a 10 kilowatt power plant? Okay. Find which type of panel I'm going to use, what could be the size of the panel I'm going to use, energy units consumed per month from a customer, what is the sanction load available, will I go with a battery based off-grid, or what is the requirement of the client, whether he's looking for power backup, area of the terrace available. Yes, these are the factors required. Thank you for typing in the chat box. So yes, available terrace area. Specifically, let's be specific on that. When you talk about area available on terrace, we have to check the length east to west. What will be the length from east to west? What will be the breadth north to south? Distance from the panels to the inverter location. Which will be the location of the inverter, so that I could know the DC cabling wiring distance. Then distance from inverter to the EV meter. How far is EV meter away from the inverter? And it distance from the solar structure or the solar panels from the terrace to the earthing location. So these are the other three parameters which would be required to know the length of your cables. Then the major three components for the material sourcing is your solar panels, your solar inverter, the type of the solar structure. So with respect to the structure, based on the client's requirement, are you going to do a ground mounted installation? Are you going to do a rooftop installation? Rooftop, again, we have a lot of options. Either we are going to do elevated installation, or we going to do it on the shed. So these are the options available. Based on that, you have to fabricate your structure. Now with respect to solar panel, solar inverter, so coming to the solar panel, we have to identify which brand you are going to use. So most of them are from the solar industry, so we will not talk or support any specific manufacturers over here. So you could decide your brand. Obviously, the wise choice would be decide the best in the industry who could give you a long-term service who have a long network across India or across Tamil Nadu based on the states, the state that would give you at least on-site service support, right? So that should be a criteria, and also check the financial credibility of those companies. Will they be withstanding all the ups and downs in next 10, 15, 20 years? Because we give 25 years performance guarantee on the solar panel, so the client believes us. But so when we decide on the panel manufacturers, we have to take enough cautions. Are we giving a product which is worth for 25 years? For example, so this is a typical data sheet of a solar panel manufacturer. So when you ask them a polycrystalline panel, they would give you these data sheets. So while designing these rooftops, let's say you're designing a 10 kilowatt system, what are the parameters you have to identify, right? So obviously, I'll go with the maximum size of the panel, or whichever is the latest we'll go. Let's say in this sheet we have 325 as the latest. So we are freezing on this 325 watt peak. And the other two important parameters what I have to look into is your open circuit voltage. We have studied yesterday that VOC, right? Open circuit voltage VOC, which is 46 volt, and the maximum voltage VMP, which is 37 volt, right? And you can notice the efficiency of the model over here. It is 16.73 to 16.99, so close to 17. So a polycrystalline efficiency is about 16%. So these are the two important parameters. Remember the VOC, 46 volt for polycrystalline 325. Then based on the panel manufacturer, each panel manufacturer has different C2C holes, because we need the C2C holes while designing your solar structure, right? So the C2C holes is your C2C dimensions on the length side of the panel. So typically a 325 watt panel, the size is around 2 meters into 1 meters. 2 meters is the length. So under this 2 meter length, you will have C2C. So you have to identify the C2C properly, and then give this information to your fabricator, so that when he makes this solar structure, he ensures that the solar panel sits on the purlin properly. So this is an important parameter which we have to notice. Then also the holes, whether it's a 6 hole in the aluminum frame or an 8 hole. So based on that, you have to decide your SS fasteners. That will also have to be communicated to your solar fabricator, so that he could supply you the exact holes. Because 8 bolt will not fit into a 6 hole, and 6 bolt will be loose for an 8 hole. So we have to give correct information. So you have to pass this data sheet to your solar structural fabricator. Fine. So now we have decided we are going with a 325 watt panel. Just a minute. Okay. So now we have decided we are going with 325 watt peak panel, and the technology is polycrystalline. And to make a 10 kilowatt plant, the simple calculations are like multiply 325 into 30, 28, or 32, right? So we are limiting here to the closest 10 kilowatt. So to reach 10 kilowatt, 9750 is the closest watt peak, right? Now I can use 31 numbers, but it was 10 kilowatt. So I'll limit to 9750, and based on my terrace area. And also one important thing is, if in Tamil Nadu, if I go anything about 10 kilowatt, and when we apply for net meter, anything about 10 kilowatt, we need to have a CIG approval, which is an electrical safety approval, which is a one-time approval. So we have to apply for that. Uh, so that will be a limiting factor also. Let's say, so I'll stick to less than 10 kilowatt. I'll stick to 9.7. Or if it's a bigger plant, 20, 30 kilowatt, I have no other choice. I have to apply a safety license. Like how do you apply for lift or your generator? So that's mandatory about 10 kilowatt in Tamil Nadu. So I need 30 panels over here. Now with respect to the solar structure, now if you see, we got the length of the solar panel from the specification sheet of the panel. Now this is the important thing, the purlins. So if you see, a solar structure will have three components. One, we'll have columns. In columns, we'll have short columns and long columns. and then the column to column will be fixed by a rafter, and then on the rafter your purlins will come. Purlins are the channels where your solar panels are mounted, right? And the purlins will be mounted to the rafter, rafter will be mounted to the columns, and column will be mounted to your civil pedestals or routed to your RCC floors. So these are the three important points. So remember we spoke about the C2C holes. The reason is the same C2C holes will match your purlin to purlin distance over here, so that your panel fits in intact. And always remember that you have to keep a 2 to 5 gap between the solar panels. So when there's a high wind velocity, your wind could escape from this gap. So typically we call this a double row structure, where we have one row of panels at the bottom and one row on the top. So it's very important to have a proper civil foundation or a PCC this thing. So in this, if you see, we have a column of 400 into 400 and the height of the column is 300 and then we have this J foundation bolts. So J foundation bolts, so that your column holes to holes will match, the column square plate will match on this J foundation bolts, and then we can tidy it up. So it's very important to have a proper civil work, so that the solar structure would not uplift during a cyclone. And this is one of the typical example how do we do this PCC structures. In some cases, we mount it on the RCC floor. In some cases, in a good example is we remove the weathering course, and the PCCs will come in from the weathering course, so that the bonding is much better, and you can always use good chemicals like Nitobond, so that your PCC chamber sits on your RCC roof, and it gives you a good adhesive bonding. The chemical is called Nitobond, which is available in the market. Any hardware or a civil shop will have this. And then we do a skirting all across the column, so that there is no water seepage. And during this, you should always use a waterproof chemical, could be from Dr. Fixit, so that you can arrest your water leakage. This is one of the example. If the client allows to rip the terracotta tiles. If they don't allow, then we have to do it in some other format. Maybe we have to do etching on the terracotta tiles and then put these pieces. So this is how the PCCs are laid. You have, so your solar fabricator will give you this drawing. What should be the column to column distance? Right here, the distance is around 2.25 meters between column to column. So based on that, you do the marking on the terrace and tell your civil contractor to put these columns. So 15 by 2 table means 15 panels at the bottom, 15 panels at the top. So we were talking about 30 panels to make a 10 kilowatt plant. Right. So in this case, it becomes very difficult to have a 15 kilowatt structure. So I have cut into two. So typically 20 panels and 10 panels. So the first table, which is a 10 cross 2 table, the 10-meter one, which is a 10 cross 2 table, and the other one is 5 cross 2 table. So it becomes simple for the transportation and installation. So 10 cross 2 and 5 cross 2 table. The whole idea is of splitting into such smaller tables is the transportation of purlins becomes difficult. What I mean to say is, let's say if a purlin is 10 meter in length, 10 meter or 5 meter in length, more than any 6 meter in length, it becomes very difficult to transport inside the city. You need big container vehicles to transport. To make it easy, we cut the purlins into a smaller lengths of maximum 5 meters, so that transportation within the city becomes easier and also cheaper. Now, with respect to, we have selected on the solar panels. So based on that, we have finished our solar structure. Now, which inverter to be used? So most of the inverter manufacturers will have a specification sheet, and that sheet will be talking about what kilowatt rating or kVA rating of the solar inverter, and in that kVA rating you will have an option of DC overloading. Typically, for example, a 10 kilowatt inverter can take 11 kilowatt or 12 kilowatt solar panels. So based on the manufacturers, they have different DC overloading. So based on that, you can take a call. So what we have to specifically see while choosing the solar inverter, we are talking about 10 kilowatt solar plant. Should I go for with an 8 kilowatt inverter or a 15 kilowatt inverter? Obviously, I'll go somewhere above. I'm putting a 10 kilowatt plant, so I have to check for a 10 kV inverter. Right, so the maximum power here the 10 kV inverter can take is 11 kilowatt DC side. So I can install the 11 kilowatt. Right, so this matches my criteria. Then I have to check on the MPPT range. That's the reason we are seeing this data sheet to design our string voltages. So what the MPPT range over here says is 550 to 850 volt, 550 to 850 volt. And we have to check on how many MPPT trackers are there. There are two MPPT trackers over here. I remember there are two MPPT trackers over here. So this is a 10 kVA system, which is a three-phase inverter, and it has two MPPT trackers. Now remember that I have 30 panels over here. Okay, and each panel VOC is around 47 volt, 46.5 or 47 volt. Right? What we have seen in the panel catalog. Now, if I put all these 30 panels in series, what happens? My VOC becomes, and I put all 30 panels in series, my VOC becomes close to somewhere around 1500 volt, which is more than the limit of 850 volt. So what I'll do, I'll divide it into two, divide by two, which means, let's say if I make 15 panels in series, I'll have a lesser VOC, which is around 700 to 750 volts. So which will fit into this MPPT range. So what we did, we got the specification sheet from the supplier, freeze on a 10 kilowatt power rating of the inverter. We have opted for a three-phase inverter. We have checked the MPPT voltage at 580 to 850 volt, and this voltage varies from inverter to inverter and manufacturer to manufacturer. So kindly cross-check while designing your plant and the number of MPPT tracker. So how many strings in 10 kilowatt? Should we have one string or two string? Can we have quick replies in the chat? Mr. Gori has replied to. Yes, the answer is two. So we'll be having two strings. So we will be seriesing 15 panels of 325 watt peak. So close to around 5 kilowatt is one string, and the other 5 kilowatt is other string. So we'll have two strings, which will be completing 30 kilowatt. Which will be completing 10 kilowatt. Now we spoke about a 10 kilowatt system. Right? Now, in case if I have a bigger plant, let's say I am designing for a 30 kilowatt system or a 50 kilowatt system. So I go to that specific catalog, find out number of MPPT trackers, find out number of MPPT inputs, and what is the MPPT voltage range. Based on the voltage range, I will decide on the number of strings. Fine. So once your inverter is freezed, then you have other smaller solar POS components like your array junction box or a DC distribution box. What does this has in that? So basically, they have some simple, I would say, simple electrical breakers like DCDP will have. For in this 10 kilowatt system, we have two strings. So we'll have two in, two out. Which means I have one positive negative for one string and another positive negative for the other string. So it will go in and come out. Why do we have a DCDP box? For two reasons. One, it acts as a circuit breaker. You have a DC breaker inside. It could be in a form of a DC fuse, or it could be a double pole DC breaker. Right? We will have the two breakers to have control on these two strings, and it will be enclosed in IP65 box. And I'll have two SPDs. SPDs is a surge protection device. In case of any surge from the panels, what happens? This SPD gets open and it earths the entire current. It prevents the inverter from damage. So that's the reason we use an SPD. So SPD is a one-time device. If it gets open, then you have to replace an SPD with the other one. That's the two reasons we are using a DC box. One, we have a control on the strings for the breaker, and other important thing is the SPD. And all this DC-DB have to be earthed properly, and it has to be a dedicated DC earth for this uh, DC current. We can't mix it with an AC earth. The next one on the inverter side, we will be having AC distribution box. In our case, we'll be requiring a 10 kilowatt system, which is a three-phase inverter. We'll be requiring a three-phase box. In that, what we'll have inside, we will have a four-pole MCB, right? And we may have a three-phase indicators RYB, and then we'll be having one AC three-phase SPD to prevent any surges coming from the EB side and harming the inverter. So if any surges from the EB side comes, which means it will, the SPD will get open and it will earth the improper or heavy rush current to the earthing system. So it prevents the inverter. The whole reason for having an ACDP and DCDP is to protect your inverter, because inverter is one of the most expensive single unit equipment in the solar power plant. So when most of the manufacturers do recommend or mandates to put an ACDP, DCB and DCDP. And then we have this output terminals. But this all parts are enclosed in an IP65 box. Now, what type of cables are required here? So, what kind of cables you will require here? From the solar panels to the inverter, from the inverter to the EB meter, and from the EB meter, from again for the earthing. So, we'll be requiring a lot of cables over here. So yes, for the strings, a DC, we'll be requiring either 4 square mm or a 6 square mm DC cable based on the distance. If the distance from the solar panels to the inverter is high, or let's say if it's beyond 15 meters or 20 meters, then I would recommend to go for 6 square mm DC cable. If it's less than 15 meters, you can go for 4 square mm DC cable. Now, what do we mean by a DC cable? How different the DC cable is different from AC cable? I remember here the DC cables are carrying current of around 10 amperes, 20 amperes based on the string, or let's say 10 amperes in a single string, and at a voltage of around 750 DC volt. Right? At a voltage of around 750 DC volt, which is much beyond your AC voltage line. Right? AC voltage lines are around in three phase around 415, and in a single phase it's around 230 to 40. Here we are talking about double. And so these DC cables are UV coated, XLPO coated, so that it could withstand the heat. It will not deteriorate as your AC cable, and also it can withstand the 1000-volt DC system. So in 2 years back, we had 1000-volt DC cable rating. Now we have around 1500-volt DC cable rating. So the strength is more now. And obviously, yes, DC cables are expensive than AC cable, and we would always recommend you to go with the DC cable. And on the AC side, we have two options from the inverter to the EV meter. Either you can go with a 4-core 10 square mm aluminum armored cable. Obviously, aluminum cables are a little economical in price, or you can go with 4-core 6 square mm copper cable. If the distance is less, let's say if this distance is near the control panel within 5 meters or 10 meters, then you can plan for an copper cable. If the distance is high, let's say 40, 50, 60 meters, and it has to go through an underground or wall mounted, then preference would be an aluminum armored cable. And the third cable required is your earth cable. Because your DCDB, ACDB boxes have to be terminated to the earthing pits. So either you can use a 4 square mm copper or a 10 square mm aluminum. The other things what we have not discussed this year, you would also requiring a lightning arrestor. If it's a bigger capacity of installation, let's say 10, 20, 30, then you need a dedicated lightning arrestor for the solar power plant. So the lightning arrestor will have a earthing GI strip or a copper gauge wire and with a dedicated earth. So that would be mandatory. And also the structural earthing. The entire structure has to be earthed. So we started from the solar panels. We formed a string of 15 plus 15. So this is how a single line diagram of this plant looks like. So we'll go step by step. So 15 panels in series. It goes to your array junction box. And the cable what we have used is a post-paramount DC cable. It enters the array junction box, it comes out and gets terminated inside the inverter. So inside the inverter, we will be having a MC4 connector slot. So we have to fix it to the male socket and female socket, plus minus plus minus. So while during the termination point, before the MC4 gets connected to your inverter, check the DC voltage with a multimeter before inserting it. Sometimes what happens, we uh, we forget the plus or minus, which is plus, which is minus, or we mix it. So always check with the multimeter before terminating it. So that will be much uh, better in terms of safety, and also it will prevent the inverter from failures, and also it lowered short circuit. And then terminate it, and the Grita inverter will give you a three-phase AC supply. So from the terminal gland, it goes to an array. It goes to an AC distribution box, which will be having a 4-pole MCB, and it could have additional features like you can have an MFM multifunctional meter, which will read the kilowatt hour reading, amps reading, all amps and voltage readings of all the three phases with the power factor readings. And then you can also have RYB indicator. So remember, if there's single phase power cut, your on-grid 3K phase inverter will not work. That's one of the drawbacks. So all three phase should be available for a three-phase inverter to work. Fine. So from ACDB, again, it will be going to your control panel or the LT panel, which will be on the load side towards your AD meter. Right. So this is how the typical connections looks like. And then remember, you have a structure grounding. You have a grounding earthing for your ACDB, earthing for your inverter, and earthing for your ACDB. So how many of you have installed an on-grid power plant? Can you quickly type in the chat box? Okay. Okay. Mr. Ravi has a vast experience. I do know Mr. Ravi from Technomat.
Yes, Jindal.
So, how is your experience, sir, while installing a 1 megawatt plant?
Yeah, actually, it is the first project we have done for the 1 megawatt solar plant at near Arbukote.
Okay.
Actually, the soil condition is very difficult to start the project for the pushing the panel, because that pillar, what we are excavating the pillars, the concrete and all is a sandy area. So pushing is not able to achieve the levels for
Okay.
all the structure. That's the first problem we faced initially. After all saturating and the leveling and keeping the structure and the panels, strings, and as well as taking the connection, it is completed. And still we made rigidity more. Even though we put for the structure concrete, we put mass concrete for the area also, so that it should not get disturbed in future also. That one point we made. And second thing, all the strings we made lighting arrestor, all the strings area, not like only one lighting arrestor, like a centralized. We made conventional type around 20-15 numbers around the area, so that to prevent the lighting arrestor for the panels. And the second thing, after the strings, we taken the DC supply to the control room for the main DC to AC converting. So after the AC and all, completely we made transformer and the substation. From substation to the TNEB substation around 3.5 kilometers roughly.
Oh.
So we made all the lines to the laying to the TNEB, and TNEB also we done more modification in substations. So really it is a hectic project because TNEB doing and our side AC, transformer, everything. And everything was done within 3 months. So it means, see, we taken as a task this, around 85 people are working. Really, we taken as a challenge and we completed this with
Great,
all approvals, everything, CAG and all. Really, it is very tough. even not even sleeping 4 hours per day. Because night returning only from site to 12 o'clock. Morning will go to 6:30 because that boring, no? Main problem that area one side sand, another substation area rock. So we can't able to make the substation at all. That took 15 days for how to make the substation digging, and we brought the tractor and digging borewell everything to make the drilling of the rock area. So that itself is a very big task. Day and night we are done. I
Fine,
mean,
sir. Yes. So
unexpected. Nobody knows what
true.
they are inside.
True.
So
A ground
finally,
mount, yes, a ground mount installation, as Mr. Ravi said, is more challenging than a rooftop because in ground mounted, you have a lot of external factors. So
yes,
you have to follow the transmission line from the site to your substation. So we have to take a lot of permission. So that itself is a completely ground mounted is a much challenging level of business, and we need much more this thing expertise to do ground mounted installations. So congratulations, Mr. Ravi, for your 1 megawatt plant.
thank you. Really,
Thank
very
you.
tough and really it is very challenging. And we are very clear. We want to make it what may come, no problem for the, even though just I should not share, but it is a cost of project. Just take it, everything, let us go ahead. No, nothing we have seen back. But we completed and this we have done for BVD and Sons, Thuthukudi. So really it is they are appreciated because the time bound work. We have completed and including approval of CAG, EB, all everything we made as a intact. And really it is very, you can say very glad, yes, we have done it.
Good,
And yeah, small size technique we have not done. Smaller 20 10 kilowatt we have not done, but our the partners are doing. So anyway, we want to carry the new latest available solars and whatever available technology we want to make, and then just to make. But future is only one solar. It is very clear that solar will be growing, and that is only future for the power. First point. Second thing, like a LED, two things will be flourishing for technology wise.
fine, sir.
Well,
Thank you.
just update all the technology and the structure and everything. And site to site vary because you said ground mounted like a roof or other building, because many things fly on off. Even a Velachari we have done, other our partner, we are seeing that during the cyclone, the panel has been disturbed totally. So caution has to take for the foundation, the roof or weight, whatever the weight has to add more. Not simply, I think what you mentioned the size that it is only okay for the mounting, but let's make it to the full load so that it will not lift to the wind.
Correct.
For 120 kilometer speed. That's what I'm telling. This is my point of view. So really, this thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. Thank you. So we'll continue with this thing. So we'll just have a look at how a 10 kilowatt site got built. So as we discussed, these are the column boxes to have a PCC blocks based on the drawing available. So you do that, and then you install your column, rafter, purlins, and on the purlins we install the solar panels with proper J foundation bolstness. We have to use GI fasteners or SS fasteners. And after the installation of the solar panels, you have to quickly run through strings. This is the DCDP, which goes inside the DCDP and goes from the DCDP to the inverter. The inverter, most of the on-grid inverters are wall mounted. So identify a place where you have easy access and mount and terminate it. And then next to the inverter, you have this ACDP or AC distribution box, which will have an MFM, which will have a breaker. So all the piping, routing has to be neatly done, and then the wiring terminations at the LT panel level, which will be at the EV meter level. So which meter we are going to synchronize, it has to be synchronized at the load side of the EV meter. And so the final plant looks like, and then always take a picture and do study the performance of the plants so that you get a proper feedback. It's very important to study the performance of the plant. Now, this we have discussed on the SLD level. Now, with respect to the studying the performance of the plant, most of the inverters, the technology has a remote monitoring system. So what we need is a Wi-Fi signal or a SIM card based Wi-Fi at the inverter level. So you fix that dongle and configure the inverter with this dongle, you will be able to track the real-time monitoring. So which means like this is how a typical daytime generation of a plant looks like. So it starts around at 6:30, slowly peaks up and basically peaks up at 9:30, 10 o'clock. And from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, you'll have the 70 or 80% of the generation happens between these two between this time. I would say around 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And then again it falls down. This is a pure generation of a solar plant. So, so never the power generation is constant. It will be fluctuating. So it will be a 10 kilowatt plant will give start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again it will come down. So it will never generate a 10 kilowatt output. But what factors as is the number of units generated during that time. So typical when this is a typical daytime generation, you'll have little bit of ups and downs based on the sunlight. Now you can see in this particular graph that we will have a cloud impact. Now, thanks to this data monitoring system, that will be able to identify which day was lower generation, which day we had a power cut, which day we had monsoons. So we'll be able to identify or will be able to take corrective actions. So, see, if you see this specific graph at around 1 o'clock, there was a power cut and the complete plant was not running, and there was a power at around 3 o'clock. Again, there was no power. So this is how there's no power cut. So I could identify that at 1 o'clock, as so and so date, there was a power cut. So if the power cut is not resuming on the next day, then I have to tell my engineer to check whether there's a power cut or something wrong with the AC/DC side or the inverter is not working. So it helps as this monitoring software helps us in preventing maintenance. And then you have also email configurations. So if something goes wrong, you have an auto email notification that there's no AC power available or there's a problem with the DC side. So we'll be able to give you a 30 days generation with this monitoring software, which will give you a prediction based on the season how much you have generated. So when we commit around 4 units, 4.5 units, how do this comes? This is an average of all these 30 days. Right, so these are the benefits of the remote monitoring system. So you have mobile apps, you have a web portal, auto millers, fall detection, power cuts. So with the data and saving, with the 6 months, you'll be able to predict the ROI. So I have committed so and so ROI. This is what the performance is. And most of the clients would do it in a phase manner. Let me install a 20 kilowatt, then I'll install one more 20 kilowatt. Let me understand whether it gives me an ROI or not. So this kind of software will be helping you. And also it gives you this thing, time for the cleaning. If your panels are not performing well, which we have to clean the solar panel. So we have good equipment in the market with a telescopic telescopic holes with a water movement brush, so that we can easily clean the solar panels. Remember, we are not supposed to walk on the solar panels while cleaning. The solar panels have to be cleaned only in the evening time. Only in the evening time or early morning time. And during the cleaning process, your plant should be switched off the DC part and the AC part should be switched off. Remember that. And there are companies taking AMCs for solar panel cleaning and for the preventive maintenance. And if we don't clean the solar panel, what happens is we lose on the generation part. We have seen that the loss would be somewhere around 20% to 25% if we don't clean the solar panels regularly. So we would advise at least once in 2 months, based on the area. If it's a highly polluted area, then once in a month or once in 2 weeks. Or if it's non-polluted places, then once in 2 months, cleaning is advised. So here we complete our session on the basics of the solar training. So from yesterday we have studied all these were simple basics. This program for all the participants, though we had 70 plus registrations, on average participant count was today 20 and yesterday was around 40. So this is how happens when we give a free program. Though we said 20 registrations are free, but it was free for all the participants. And to benefit all the participants again, who are not able to attend this program, we will be sharing the YouTube video so that you can see it at any point of time. And this course was designed basically for youngsters or members who are starting the solar business, so that the basics are strong. So we also have in-depth courses for off-grid, on-grid, which are 3 days, 4 days course. If anybody is interested on a one-to-one basis also, let me know. So I thanks all the participants for joining and listening us for this workshop. The session may get